Yes, we're back. What's happening, Pod Gang? My name is Emil Walker, and you are listening to Inside the Ride, a podcast that dives deep into conversations with fascinating people about the highs and lows of the journey towards purpose. My guest today is Alan, the director and co-founder of a non-profit called Conscious Impact, based in Thakore, a small village about a 5-hour bus journey from Kathmandu in Nepal. Back in 2015, he was out there trekking with a couple of friends when the earthquake hit, and instead of flying home to safety, he started working as a volunteer. Having seen how badly affected the more remote areas were, he and his friends decided to start their own organisation to bring as much help and support as possible to the community in and around Thakore. Here is the mission statement from their website. Through long-term collaborative development, we are working to meet global challenges with sustainable solutions to help deep transformation take place in rural communities. So from natural building to agriculture to youth empowerment, if there's something the community needs, Conscious Impact are literally there to figure out a way to make it happen. Alan's been living between the US and Nepal for the past 4 years, leaving camp during the monsoon season and also to seek some medical care back home, which we chat about too. The camp setup is very modest, with everyone sleeping in tents that he says are definitely not made for years of use in the Nepali mountains, but they do keep you dry for the most part, and that is all you really need from a tent. Living this way, being so close and connected to nature with very little need for many material possessions, is something I would highly recommend to anyone, even if it's just for a short amount of time. There's definitely something to be said about cutting yourself off from these daily distractions and really engaging with the environment and people that you're with and around. I certainly need a bit more of that in my life, that is for sure. I had a really awesome time chatting with Alan about the work he's doing and the many experiences he's been through since starting Conscious Impact. He's a super passionate and humble guy and is clearly living a very fulfilling life through generously giving his time to serve those that need it most. If you're interested to get involved with volunteering at Conscious Impact, we talk a bit about it in the podcast, but I'll also add all the relevant links in the description so you can check them out there. Anyway, let's do this podcast. Please make some noise for Alan Gula. So how did the project get started? What was the idea behind
the project? Was brought out of we were hiking during the earthquake.
Oh, you were here when it happened?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So in 2015, a buddy and I were hiking up towards the Everest Base Camp, and we had a quintessential uploading of photos. We made it, and then we went offline for 7 days, and in between the time we uploaded the photos and we had not finished our trek, there was the 2015 earthquake in Nepal. So
wow.
We were on the eastern part of our trek, maybe 4 more days left. We had felt the earthquake, but the epicenter was much further west. And so by the time we had gotten to the next town to watch the news, we had 600 emails and our friends and family were looking for us. And I felt really bad because I didn't know the earthquake made international news.
Could you actually feel the ground shaking where you were, or was it?
Yeah, that day I had woken up and a friend and I were on separate parts on the same hike. One friend was in a tea shop, the other one was in a cave, and I was kind of halfway up a mountain. And of course, everything shook around us, and it was noticeable, but we didn't know whether or not it had made news in other parts. And we didn't know about the damage in Kathmandu. We didn't know about the damage in other parts of the country. Our scope for the first 4 days was pretty in an isolated area.
Right. And then at what point did you start seeing the kind of
We saw one or two structures. The hotel we stayed in the following night had rocks come down in the night. So structures were still moving. About a week after the actual earthquake, so around May 1st, we had, checked back online. watched international news for the first time and saw footage of the earthquake, and were, coming to terms with what was going on in the rest of the country, a country we'd only been in for 30 days. So our experience in Nepal was strictly hiking. I had a flight a week later to go back to the United States to just in time for Mother's Day and spend time with my family. I was on my way back home.
But so you went back to the States and then came back here?
I didn't get on that plane.
You didn't get on the plane?
No, of course not. I was volunteering in Kathmandu. I had gone out and I was looking for a sign, and I'd got in the back of a truck and went out towards the epicenter and saw kind of like what had happened, where things were taking place. And my background was in nonprofit management, and I became a volunteer in the months immediately after the earthquake, and I lived in Kathmandu. I got an internship with a bamboo building organization, and I was heavily involved in building temporary shelters, just volunteering to learn more Nepali, to see more of the country, and to try and figure out if there was something that we could do to support the situation, because there was an intimate connection. Having been here during the earthquake, having had friends that were involved, we wanted to somehow support.
And so this area is pretty far away from Kathmandu. We took the bus out yesterday, and it was amazing to feel like we were just going completely into the midst of Nepali countryside and nowhere. And so what brought you all the way specifically to this place?
I think Nepal has that mystery of the mountains and the allure of the road, and almost all parts of this country seem rural and intimate. But we had gone to about 7 other districts. We had done that bus ride in 8 different directions.
Wow.
And we had gone honestly looking and analyzing on a set of factors that we deemed accessibility, need, and maybe just the right fit for our organization and our efforts. We also began an Indiegogo fundraiser to get some money for the initial kind of seed startup for Conscious Impact. And the Sindhu Palchak region, and more specifically the community with which our organization is based now, was a part of that search. It was one of the many communities we visited after the earthquake through one volunteer initiative or the other to see if there would be a place where we could do a long-term project. We were thinking more than just temporary shelters.
And so what you've got going on now with the volunteer programs and everything, was that an idea you had then, or is it completely grown?
I think our organization started out with the idea of using volunteers because we were familiar with that as a model for running an organization. We also wanted to provide an opportunity for people who felt called to support at this time. And many people who come to Nepal develop an affinity for the country based on their travel experience here. They have very deep relationships with the people they meet. This culture is something that inspires a lot of people, and people were writing to us for either donations or a way in which they can get involved and helped. So that was our initial goal. We wanted to make volunteers effective, and we wanted to bridge the community gap between those that lived in the area with which we were working and a diverse international volunteer organization. And we thought that those two could build homes, potentially do agriculture projects, and the first volunteers were our friends. The first volunteers were people that we had put on a call on social media and asked for the support. And because of our experience in other volunteer organizations, the first batch of volunteers came up within 4 months of the initial earthquake.
Amazing. And how's it been kind of building relationships with the locals? Because I know just from the bad press that charity work gets in the news and stuff, how kind of hard it must be to create that bond with people that need the aid.
I think Nepal is seen in the international development industry as a difficult place to have a lasting impact. Being a new organization after the earthquake, we are also dealing with the collective history of all the other organizations that have worked in this area, all the trust, mistrust, past experiences that community members have had. The one thing that leveled the playing field was the earthquake was a unique developmental situation that the country had never faced, and it provided an opportunity for the intimate program in which we were interested in creating. Community members were receptive because they were in a place of supreme need, and they needed to build homes and didn't have a lot of options. So our job was to collaborate with community members to figure out ways in which they thought about rebuilding and reclaiming a sense of normal or a new normal livelihood after the earthquake.
And so what help and projects are you supporting? We talked a little bit about it on the way up, and you gave me a little tour of your brick. What would you call it? A brick kiln?
We call it the training center or the brick factory.
The brick factory.
Yeah, so initially we were confused about how to build. My background is not in building. It would be more in management of volunteer experiences. And so we consulted the Nepalis and asked them ultimately what they were interested in and how homes were thought about being rebuilt. And we purchased a brick machine from Auroville in India. And we used that brick machine to employ a group of Nepalis to make our own building materials. Taking into consideration the social, political environment of Nepal after the earthquake, there were shortages of petrol, cooking gas, and other imported supplies, and that included building materials. So we were trying to design homes for less than $10,000 with as many locally sourced materials and labor as possible. That was our initial goal.
And do you have to take into account that there might be the possibility of another earthquake happening when you're building?
Yes. The majority of the deaths that occurred because of architecture in the home were because of masonry methods that didn't account for when earthquakes happen, they create what we call S waves. And these S waves mean that structures are moving in ways in which they weren't built to move. And when you have old structures, you have a lot of weight, and you have stone, and you encounter this movement. If it doesn't have rebar, and if it doesn't have link beams and other forms of masonry and construction that take into account for these things, then yes, the structure can implode or explode depending on how it moves. And so that was how the majority of the homes fell. And we wanted to make sure that we addressed that from the beginning, is that this is an earthquake-prone area, and we want to rebuild not the same, but better. And we want to teach different methods. And we want to work with masons, and we want to work with local builders. And we want to combine Nepali traditional architecture with a method that, again, uses locally sourced materials and accounts for earthquakes in the future.
Yeah, I imagine that's an extremely important thing to be considering.
Absolutely. The last one occurred within 100 years.
Wow.
So, these were also two earthquakes. There was one on May 12th that was 7.6. So there were two twin 7 or above earthquakes within the same month. And I think that was really important to take into consideration, because as we were building, there were also aftershocks for the years following the earthquake.
Years.
So things were still moving 2 years later, and you would feel the ground shake. So it was something that was present in everybody's mind, is that we need to be building considering these things.
Wow. So what's it like for you personally living out here? Like, it must be so different to your life back home. Like, for me, I love it. Like, I love camping, and I love being in the wild, being in the elements, being in nature. Like, we're doing a podcast right now on the side of a mountain, and a minute ago I could see across the valley, and now I can probably see 20 feet in front of me because there's a huge cloud around us.
There's something to be said for the intimacy of nature. I think that's something that as city dwellers or people that have urbanized, we have forgotten how to live back into the rural communities. And in many communities, this is where culture lives. This is where people remember how to build from scratch. They remember how to harvest things. They can tell you about the seasons. They're very in tune with the weather. They have to plant according to certain things. They know the monsoon. So for us, we wanted to welcome volunteers in, but we had to be upfront and say that our living quarters are modest because we're building homes for people that don't have them. And so if we invested in a volunteer camp that was extremely comfortable from day one, maybe it would be in the face of Nepalis that didn't have anything. So there was a unifying factor of kind of collectively camping and getting through this time together. And I think that's what bonded the group. That's what made everybody close, is that we got through some difficult times together. And the only thing I can say is that tents are made for weekend camping, not for 3 years living on the side of the mountains in Nepal. Things deteriorate over time,
3 years. Wow. That's quite a good length of time. Do you think you would kind of recommend living in the wild like this, at least for a short length of time, to most people?
Yeah, I think when volunteers come, the first thing they encounter is that They are living in a farming lifestyle, in a farming community. So they go to bed, pretty early, and they wake up with the sunrise. And in doing so, you're resetting your circadian rhythms. You are back sleeping on the earth. You are exposed to the elements. And because of that, you're extremely aware of what's going on around you, maybe more so than where you come from or back home, because you get into the day-to-day monotony of activity. But out here, you have to be extremely in tune with the weather because it changes. And it's important for the agriculture programs, the building, the bricks need to be covered with burlap if it starts to rain. So I think people here helped us feel more comfortable camping in a very exposed hillside, and it's beautiful. I think maybe the biggest impact the organization has is inviting people to come back to nature.
Yeah, I'm so sad that we're only here for a few days because I feel like I could be here for a long time.
Many people stay up here for a while.
What's the longest people stay with you for?
We have people from the first season who are still staff members, who've become long-term volunteers, and now are in charge of different programs. That means that they would have arrived in September of 2015 and are with us today in April 2019.
Wow.
And we work 9 months of the year. We take off during the monsoon season, which is June, July, August.
Is it just so wet here you can't do anything?
Yeah. I mean, for us, it's a constant battle between wanting to be here more and to serve the community, but then to also take into consideration the safety of the volunteers and to know that the roads are not always passable. So planning and logistics become increasingly more difficult as the rains come. And so we also want to give the community a rest from our presence. We want to, acknowledge the fact that they've never had a foreign contingency working here on daily programming in construction, agriculture, and school programs. So for the 3 months during the monsoon, it's great for agriculture. Community members are busy with their farms. And so we give them the opportunity to have a break from our presence. And we kind of renew our contract the following season, and we start again in September.
I really enjoyed last night the gratitude circle. I felt like that was such a nice exercise for everyone to kind of share what they were grateful for that day. Do you do that every day?
Yeah, we ask volunteers to come together before dinner and to, offer gratitude for their day. And it's a good opportunity to thank somebody in the group, somebody that you spent time with. And I think it's a good opportunity for us. We come from maybe more material privilege, but life is made up of other things besides things you can see and touch. So gratitude reminds us to be thankful for what we have and to reflect on the lessons that we learned from the day.
Do you think you've become less materialistic since being here?
I don't know how much I was in the beginning, but for sure, I think it's dissipated over the years. I think after some time, when you see how people live and the things they accumulate, you begin to want to accumulate more knowledge or experiences around certain subjects, and that becomes more of a priority. And it's because you're inspired by what the people around here have been through. They've been through the earthquake. They've salvaged what they could. They've worked their butts off to get a home built again, and we've tried to support them along the journey. And in that process, you concentrate on other things. You see other things maybe as more valuable in life than having possessions.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was in India the last couple of weeks and met a lot of very spiritual people out there, and they very much believe in consciousness or the soul continuing into the next life when you die. And they're like, well, I can't take any of this stuff with me, so why would I accumulate?
It'd be healthy for that to spread a little bit more to our society. I think that's what the East and the West teach one another, is that there are aspects of life that can't be tangible, and so we should be concentrating more on the way in which we use all the resources that we have. And so conscious impact is a space in which people can maybe delve into that for the first time, or to expand upon that if they've already, felt that life is about other things. We just provide a platform so they can be useful volunteers during their time here.
What was your life like before you were out here? Was it drastically different, or?
Ironically similar. I went to India also for 6 months prior to coming to Nepal, mainly to question. I had had my dream job in my early 20s. I was a volunteer coordinator for a nonprofit in the United States. I had left that job and I had felt that I was a little bit lost in my purpose for life. India calls all those people. And afterwards, I came to Nepal. The earthquake happened. And within a year and a half, I had the exact same job I had prior to going to India, volunteer coordinating for a nonprofit. And I felt like maybe my prayers had not been accurately understood. I had asked for a clear mission, and instead I just got the same thing I was doing prior to coming there. So it was ironic that we found ourselves in a very familiar situation, and we were working with volunteers to complete projects in foreign countries as best as possible.
And you made pizza as well, you were saying. I just tried to help you guys make some pizza, and I made one in the time that you made 45.
Yeah, the productivity wasn't there, but we appreciate the effort. Yeah, along the way, we discovered that food would maybe be one of the vices we allow ourselves to indulge in camp. Nepali cuisine is very varied. It's not just dal bhat and momos. And so over time, we began to show off different recipes that our cultures have created. And pizza was maybe one of the ones that came out of the whole endeavor. And Nepalis are used to eating rotis. And so we just threw some cheese and sauce on top and tried to pitch it as a roti. And ever since then, we bake pizzas every Saturday for volunteers and for community members to come
Every
down.
Saturday?
That is a baking day for us. It's our day off from work. And we try and break bread, hang out together in a social setting, and then invite Nepalis to try new food. And I would absolutely say we have the best pizzeria in all of Sindhu Palchak, Nepal.
Wow, that's a statement.
You can get some in a few hours.
Yeah, there's something about food that really brings people together, especially people from different countries, because you either have a lot to talk about or you have a lot of recipes to share, and there's something really nice about that, I think.
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure that our kitchen was vegetarian, mainly because of acknowledging local customs, and we wanted to make sure that it was inclusionary for as many people as possible. And I think over time, when you have the exact same ingredients, the creativity comes about because you don't want to eat the same thing over and over again. So we began experimenting in different spaces, and of course having, over 500 volunteers in 4 years from dozens of countries, people are very opinionated about how hummus should be made and how food should be prepared. And so we've been the beneficiaries of all these foodies that come through as volunteers and leave their mark. And pizza and baking became a staple every Saturday unintentionally, but something that I'm very happy has continued.
The pizza ritual.
Exactly. I got a job in a pizzeria back in Seattle, mainly because I had experience baking in Nepal. So I didn't even know, but I was kind of preparing for the next few months of my employment.
Yeah, it feels like on the kind of ritual note, like last night there was obviously like the songs and stuff, and then I was too tired to take part in the women's and the men's circle, unfortunately. I would have loved to have been a part of that, but it feels like there's a lot of effort that goes into, you're called Conscious Impact, but into understanding more about your conscious and being able to share, being vulnerable and having those conversations that I feel like we often run away from back at home.
Yeah, volunteers come with a sense of vulnerability here, and we like to be able to support that. One of the best things that's happened in the last few years is the type of people that we began attracting to this space are interested in having those conversations. They've traveled in India, they've been to ashrams, they've done meditation techniques, and when they come up here, we just try and ground everybody in a sense of service. Karma yoga. Karma yoga is the state of seeing yoga as an ability to serve other people, to see others as the face of God. And ultimately, we try and support them to have volunteer projects that make lasting impact in the community. And ideally, that'll be over time impact your consciousness. You'll begin to see the world differently. So the name is also kind of indicative of what we hope happens over time, is that by doing projects in an intentional manner, your mentality will begin to shift. And in that shift, you'll be more open to experiences, to travel, to supporting others, or to understanding cultures in a different way.
So I've got like a few questions that I ask, the same questions to each guest. So apart from the basic necessities in life, is there anything you need each day to be happy?
I think just waking up is a gift. We've been through so much. I've really been appreciative of just being alive and having the opportunity to be out here. The earthquake challenged a lot of my perceptions on personal security and safety. And I think that over the last few months, I've just been really grateful to wake up every day and to have the opportunity to volunteer out here. I need water every day, technically.
You have good water here.
Yeah.
You've got a good supply.
Yeah, we've been able to do certain things that increase our water capacity to hold some of the gray water that we use in the community, and we use Sawyer water filters to purify everything. So water's life.
Have you ever had a near-death experience?
Yes, because of my time here.
Really?
Yes, I left in 2017 with parasites. I had been up here for a long time, and I had been eating street food and was pretty run down and stressed. I lost about a quarter of my body weight, and I was hospitalized in the States for a week. And because of that, I think that's one of the reasons I'm just grateful to wake up every day. This project turned very personal very quickly, and I didn't have the means to be able to seek healthcare here in Nepal, so I went home. It was the beginning of a journey of personal health and rebuilding my own stock of vital force to be able to combat sickness in the future. And it was 2 years before I felt I was able to board a plane to come back to Nepal, and that was directly because of the time I spent here after the earthquake, for sure.
What did you pick up? Was it just bad bacteria or?
Yeah, there was norovirus, which is also talked about as cruise ship virus, very common in when the food preparation isn't done well. And I have a nasty habit for street food. I absolutely love all the treats in India. I love all the treats in Nepal. I can't say no. And so over time, I had just begun to lose my ability to process food, and I needed to go home and take some time for myself, and to also re-examine why I had let myself get so sick, and to not be able to step away from this work. It was based in the fact that I felt like I had to be here in order for it to perpetuate, and I didn't want to leave the relationships I had spent the last 2 years cultivating. And in the end, I think it was the best thing for my own personal evolution to take some time for myself and to examine the balance I want to have with this organization and my time in Nepal moving forward.
So you knew you were sick, but you persisted to carry on working?
Yeah, I didn't have
while.
solid stool from December until March. I wasn't able to hold things down, but I guess you lose your perception of what's healthy or not based on where you are and what you're going through. And the first 2 years after the earthquake was crunch time. We were starting this organization. We were starting to make bricks from scratch. And then I got to see the bricks get delivered to job sites, and it was everything I wanted. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to have the health I needed to see through the following year. But because of the dedication of the community members that we work with and the international volunteers that took on more responsibility within Conscious Impact as an organization, I felt like I could take time off to be with my family, to take care of my health, and to get strong enough again to come back. So this trip to me is a little bit of a homecoming, because it took me 2 years to build my body back up to come back to be able to visit and to volunteer again. So it's a very special month in my life to be able to be back here.
It must feel great.
That's amazing. On top of the world right now. It's just watching everything happen, watching our community members in the homes that they built with the bricks that they made, and just feeling so proud to be a part of this whole process, and to watch the growth of our staff members, the international staff members who are become long-term volunteers but take on responsibilities more than the average visitor here. And I'm just very proud of everybody.
Has it changed much and developed since you've been gone?
Yes, we are one of the most productive nonprofits I've ever been a part of. We are accomplishing our tasks and goals at an alarmingly fast rate. We are building things faster than I expected. We are completing things. Things are evolving. New staff members are coming. Kids are growing up, and their brothers and sisters want to get involved. And we're finding new ways to get into the schools, to have after-school education, to do English education. I couldn't be happier with the progress here. We have fun, but we're, again, grounded in the mentality of karma yoga, and that our bodies are here for the service of the community and for one another at large. And we want to make sure that we are putting our efforts and energies in places that the community is mutually agreed upon would be useful. So we build water projects, orphanages, schools, single family homes, And we're open to building a health post in a clinic maybe in the future as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, how is the health service here? Like the bus we took, I'm like, if someone had a drastic accident, how do you get them to a hospital?
Exactly. We have construction all the time up here, and we're very wary of anything that happen. But again, one prayer that we always ask every day is for the safety and the health of the volunteers and the community members. So it's something we're very conscientious of, and we try and say, but all of this is to be for service. So please protect the people who are out here. If anything happens, we have an emergency action plan as an organization. We try and get the volunteer to Kathmandu. We also require health insurance with helicopter services if needed, and the helipad is in this community next door.
Okay, that makes things a little bit more
But I've cut myself up here. We had a volunteer pass a kidney stone. We've had all types of opportunities. We've had all types of uncomfortable things go on up here. But ultimately, this is what makes people resilient, is in the absence or the lack of having services, you figure out how to be strong on your own. And I think that that's what creates the backbone of this farming community, is that people are fiercely independent. And so the earthquake brought people together. It brought people to have to use their energies to support the construction of one another's homes and to work together to get through something. I thought it was an incredible example of how a country could come together, especially with a history of division, civil war. The earthquake could have caused a completely different set of chain reactions in this country. And from our observations, people came together to build, to support one another, and it was a beautiful process.
That's amazing to hear. I heard somewhere that there was a load of aid that was given around the world, but a load of it disappeared in the government. I don't know if you can talk about that. Maybe not. But
No, I have no interest in getting involved in the politics. I believe in karma, and I think that everybody who donates should have the opportunity to make sure that it gets to the people it was intended to receive. And I would say it would be no surprise if things disappeared. It's just unfortunate because Nepal is the land of Dhamma, that is universal law. It is a place where these practices and these teachings are traditionally held. And so the earthquake maybe created opportunities for greed. It made people maybe interested in making a buck off of aid. This is traditionally something that happens in earthquake-affected areas with a weak rule of law. I've seen it before. But as far as Conscious Impact's involvement in that, we tried to be as transparent as possible. I, as the director and co-founder of the organization, forewent any salary. So there was no financial compensation for any of the work that myself or majority of the staff members have done up here. We paid Nepali workers, and we avoided the majority of the problems because we didn't behave in that manner. And I believe that in time, that will be exposed and they will have to deal with the decisions they made. And I personally don't want to have to deal with that. I can enter this community when I want, see my friends, and to share meals with them because of the work that we did and how we did it. And that's a very important part of the history of our organization.
Yeah, it does feel like there's a lot of love here between...
It's a lot of love. It's the ever-expanding love bubble. We just want to make sure people come up here and are able to safely volunteer. And we ourselves were international development students with extremely keen eyes on where money is going, transparency, leadership, and administration. I learned more becoming maybe a little bit of a leader within this organization, and I am very welcoming to all the students that come up here with questions about how money is spent, how it's used, and what do we do everything, and why do we do it. But again, our organization just tries to base itself in a daily offering of activities that will support the community. And if people want to get more elevated conversations beyond that, we have, like you saw last night, different spaces where that becomes appropriate. But Conscious Impact's role is very simple. We make volunteers effective because we have the relationships in the community, and we ask them how our energies and our efforts could be supported towards collective goals, and we do it. And we just say that is our only obligation to complete within a season are our construction projects. We want to engage people, and we want to do it safely and with as much fun as possible.
There's a lot of fun.
Yeah, come on up. Everybody is welcome. We have volunteer groups throughout the year that are scheduled. We have long-term internships available, and the website has all the information for that stuff.
And then do people cover a fee when they come to volunteer for you? Because I've seen volunteer programs and some of them are very expensive.
Exactly. Yeah, we ask volunteers to fundraise, and they are our main funding model. And the reason we do that is that it creates our own autonomy. If we had a single donor, or if we had government aid money, oftentimes that's earmarked for specific outcomes. And we as an organization hold council. And within that council, we decide with community members what projects will be getting our energies, our efforts. And again, that's financial, physical, emotional, spiritual, everything. So when we decide that, we take that very seriously, and we want to make sure that nobody in the community is excluded from meetings in which they can express how they want the organization to go. But we decide where the money goes based off of those interactions, rather than somebody who is donating the money without the experience on the ground telling us how they want to see the money spent. So yes, volunteers are encouraged to fundraise, and they are asked to have mandatory minimums because we use that money for projects, and it creates our autonomy as an organization to use the funds how we deem fit with the community, rather than having those funds be earmarked from abroad or from an office outside the country.
It sounds like a very good way to be doing it.
Yeah, it also creates buy-in. Once people realize that their money is being used for things, I think that they create a certain amount of buy-in, and they're invested. They're invested, and they don't want to let the experience pass them by. They get up and they participate. And as soon as we see somebody who is kind of fallen off the loop with participation, we try and see if it's a health-related issue, or maybe it's time for them to move on, because this space isn't always perfect for everybody. I myself had to take 2 years away after making it to get healthy again. And I wanted to come back and volunteer, and every time I come back, it's reacquainting myself with how can I fit into this model. And the good thing about the organization is everyone here is so supportive to include others, and inclusion is one of our missions and our goals.
Yeah, I felt so included turning up yesterday, and we came just in time for lunch, and it was like just being around a load of friends and family.
Yeah, that's an atmosphere we're very proud of, and I don't think it's fake. When people come up here, they have a genuine connection with one another, and I'm so thankful that we're doing it at such a young age, because we have a lot of life to live, and it's good to know each other at a young age to see where this goes, and to, try and get people from around the world to talk to each other.
When do you feel most fulfilled?
Oh, when I'm sitting in the Nepali home, sharing food, talking, practicing my Nepali, and seeing the growth of that community member, or the completion of the project around them, or the upcoming excitement they have. We've been discussing homestays with the village mayor. So we want to get more involved with community members, and they want that. I feel fulfilled that most organizations have the biggest difficulty engaging the community. They can have loads of money, great ideas, but if people don't gather around what you're trying to lead, it seems useless. And so one of the best things about being out here has been that community members show up to our events, they participate, and they are interested. And I would rather have somebody yelling at a community meeting and being fired up than being apathetic, because I feel fulfilled when there's engagement and people are interested in what we're doing, and they have an opinion of what we're doing out here. And we can always find the volunteers or the money to accomplish the task or the project. But if the community isn't mobilized to participate, then the nonprofit very quickly will see that they have difficulty existing, because their point is to support the local development. And if people don't want to participate in that, then it doesn't matter how much money you have. You still have to connect with people on a human level, heart to heart, and make sure that they're engaged in a way that they feel respected, and they're moving towards something that they also want. And they communicate to us ideas, and we do the research. They came to us with the idea of growing coffee because they thought that would be a great way to supplement income. So we researched coffee. It turns out this area would probably grow amazing amounts of coffee. We are in the second year of distributing 10,000 coffee saplings.
Wow.
That was not an intention after the earthquake in any way, shape, or form. But it was something that they brought to us. And we always feel very, very sacred when they bring us a request. It doesn't mean we do everything they ask, but it's still something to consider. It could be the direction of our programming. So we work with them to come up with ideas in which we could accomplish that using volunteers. So we have coffee to look forward to in the next few months.
Yeah, it's very hands-on work, isn't it? Just having that immediate bond and relationship with the local people here. I feel like just being here and being a part of it, you can instantly see the difference that's being made.
Yeah. We were walking with basket weavers the other day, and I was talking with another volunteer thinking about how there are different forms of intelligence. And you don't need to be literate to be intelligent. You can observe nature, and you can mimic, and you can build, and you can fashion your home in a way in which you've observed over years and years. And maybe one of the best gifts that this project is doing is appreciating alternate forms of intelligence that rural community members have abundance of. And you get this the old school way. It's life. Just living out here and surviving and getting through all the difficult challenges that the environment presents. And not only that, but flourishing. Having a very successful flower garden and weaving things and being able to share that. And as an organization, I'm very proud to say that we try and incorporate those ideas as much as possible and to respect that as a form of intelligence and something that can lead to something that we can interweave. So our camp where volunteers stay is a exploratory space where we learn from the community and we try and create things that could help our home constructions or go back out into the community in some way in the future.
So last question, which is one that I wanted to ask people because I know a lot of my friends have suffered with mental health and it's not something that we feel comfortable talking about. So I wondered if you've ever suffered from any sort of mental health related things.
I think trauma is a necessary part of creativity, and I think it's a very important part because from that you're able to grow. But I think too much of that, maybe you can find yourself in a space that you're not really sure how to ask for help. I was definitely in a dark space up here. I don't know if it was mental health because it was physical health, and at the time the two were very related. But I've been very fortunate to be able to be in spaces and to have different techniques in which to mitigate that. You can't know the light without the dark. And I'm
the
very
yin without the yang.
Yeah. And I think in that balance, maybe the challenge of our generation is to accept the things that happened to us as children and the things that we did before we were cognizant of, and to grow from that space. And yeah, I'm a pretty upbeat person, but yes, I've been in dark places mentally and physically. And each one of those, I think, was another step on the path. And again, you're seeing me on the other side of it. And I'm back with my friends, and I'm back in a place I love to be, and I couldn't be happier. And I think mental health also comes from a lack of maybe energy flowing in areas of your life. You do need to have a balance of financial income and safety and stability. I think there is value in partnership and having a partner. I think there is value in having a meaningful livelihood. And so comparatively, had I taken those 3 years of my life that I was working on this project and sunk it into a different workspace and environment, I don't know how I would answer this question. But because I was doing community service and again, avoiding the temptations to make money off of this project, I feel much clearer with my headspace today. And it's an ongoing journey. But I think the heart is where it's at. As soon as we get to the heart and you can make decisions based off of empathy, this is giving the head a little bit of a rest.
Have you got any long-term plans? Do you think you'll be here for quite a while?
I didn't expect to be here 4 years ago. And so every day is a gift. I would love for this project to continue. We joke that after every season we go to the community and say, okay, are we doing this again? Are we renewing our vows? Are we going to get back together after the monsoon season? And with a resounding yes every season, I feel like many people in this village are excited to have the bricks moving again and the agriculture happening. But me personally, I would love for this project to continue and for this to be one of many homes in which I could visit over the years. And I think that's the blessing, is to behave in such a way where you're always welcome.
So if people want to get involved, where can they find you
Please
guys?
check out www.consciousimpact.org. We have volunteer sign-up forms. You can message us through the Facebook page. Find us at Conscious Impact, also on Instagram. And staff members respond to those emails, and we can coordinate if people want to volunteer here or donate. You're more than welcome to. If you would like more information about the project, you can also find our personal contact information through the Facebook and the website.
Perfect. And I'll put all of these links in the show notes as well. So
that'd be super helpful. I'm really appreciative of your time. I'm thankful you came up here. I'm glad we got a chance to meet. and to have a discussion on the hillside of beautiful Nepal.
Yeah, I feel like every podcast moving forward from here is just going to be a massive letdown for me.
Well, we have maybe an initiative to start a podcast room here at camp. So if you want to bring guests up here and do your podcast from here on
100%.
out, we can definitely give you a space.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you so much for getting involved as well. And I hope that I'll be able to make it back here again.
You're always welcome.
Soon.
Anybody who reaches out to us who has a genuine interest in helping communities and to learn more about this work. I do believe we're a good source of information. We're also connected to other projects in the country. We are all the time inviting other Nepali NGOs to visit us to see our model. And we don't have an office in Kathmandu. We invite people out to the village. This is where the magic happens. So come join the ever-expanding love bubble.
Thanks very much, man.
Awesome, brother.
Yes, we've made it. What an amazing podcast. Thank you so much, Alan, for sharing all of your experiences and everything you've been up to with Conscious Impact over the last few years. It's a very inspiring story that you guys are writing at the moment, and I hope it's resonated with other people as much as it has me. If you are looking to get involved and fancy doing some volunteering with Conscious Impact, you can follow the links that I'll leave in the description, and I'll also leave some details for Alan's social media if you want to get in touch with him. We'll be back very soon with another interesting guest, so stay tuned and see you then.